They mocked him, punished him, and pushed him into a combat unit by mistake, never knowing Desmond Doss was the one man Iron Valley was built to awaken. When the buried machines roared back to life, the team panicked, but only Doss heard the impossible voice, a voice carrying his brother's name. Beneath Iron Valley waited something far worse than any enemy. Thousands of trapped human memories begging Doss for the salvation their creator, Dr. Gabriel Thorne, refused to give. And when the truth finally rose from the deep, Doss faced a choice: free every soul, or let Thorne erase them forever. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the miracles God hides in the darkest places. Morning fog hung over the camp like a veil, blurring the lines between men and ghosts. The Iron Battalion stirred to life amid shouts, boots thudding against the frozen earth. Private Desmond Doss stood apart from the others, holding a folded letter in his hand, a letter that still bore the Army Medical Corps seal. It was proof that he had been meant for the medic division, but fate, or error, had placed him among soldiers trained to kill, not heal. The words blurred in his vision as he thought of what his mother once said, "When the world loses its mercy, God hides it in the hearts of the few." He wondered if that's why he was here, to be the last piece of mercy left in a place that worshipped strength. Sergeant Wolf called his name. The man's tone was sharp, the kind honed by too many years barking orders no one wanted to follow. Wolf was a veteran of earlier battles, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had seen more graves than sunsets. He had lost a brother in a senseless ambush years ago, and since then, pity had been burned out of him like rust-off steel. To him, hesitation meant death, and idealists like Doss were dangerous. "Yo!" Wolf barked, tossing a rifle at his feet. "Pick it up." Doss stared at the weapon, his heart pounding. Every fiber in him wanted to refuse, but he could feel the eyes of the men around him, waiting, mocking. He swallowed, steadying his voice. "Sir, I can't." Wolf's expression hardened. "Can't or won't?" "Won't," Doss said quietly. "I came here to save lives, not take them." A silence fell, heavier than the winter air. Then someone laughed. A young private named Keller, brash, restless, barely 20. He had joined the Army after his father's debts left his family destitute. Violence had become his language of survival. "Save lives," Keller said with a sneer. "You'll be saving ours by dying first, preacher." The others chuckled, feeding off each other's cruelty. Doss didn't respond. He simply lowered his eyes and began cleaning the rifle he refused to use. Wolf turned away, muttering something about fools who thought God would catch their bullets. That night, the barracks were alive with drunken chatter. Doss sat by the doorway, reading a small Bible with frayed corners. It had been his mother's, passed down from a man who had survived another war. He traced a line with his finger, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and felt a knot in his chest tighten. He wasn't sure if he was brave or just stubborn, but deep inside, he felt the quiet ache of someone fighting a battle no one could see. A faint sound drew his attention, soft paws padding against concrete. From the shadows emerged a German shepherd, its eyes steady, posture alert. The dog bore an old rescue harness, though its markings were worn away by time. It stopped in front of him, head tilted as if studying his soul. Someone in the barracks called out, "That's Ranger, used to belong to the medics before the last mission wiped him out." The voice trailed off. Ranger stepped closer, sitting down beside Doss, silent but present. The soldier felt something shift inside him. He reached out slowly, brushing his hand against the dog's fur. "You miss them too, don't you?" Ranger blinked once, then rested his chin on Doss's knee. Neither of them spoke, but the stillness between them felt like understanding. Over the following days, the pattern repeated. The others drilled with rifles while Doss practiced tying tourniquets on sandbags. He kept notes about field injuries, pressure points, blood loss, anything that might help him save a life. Wolf ignored him, except when assigning extra duties, cleaning latrines, scrubbing floors, hauling crates no one else wanted to touch. It was meant to break him, but Doss accepted it wordlessly. To him, suffering wasn't shame. It was service. Yet each night, when he lay awake, listening to the laughter of men who hated him, the question returned like a ghost. What if I am wrong? One evening, Captain Harkins arrived for inspection. His authority was quiet but absolute, the kind that didn't need shouting. He was the kind of man shaped by duty, not ambition, his calm masking years of buried guilt. He read through the roster, pausing when he reached Doss's file. "Private," he said, "you were meant for the medic division. The transfer request was denied. You'll serve where you're assigned." Doss nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, sir." Harkins studied him for a long moment, then added, "Men like you make others uncomfortable, Doss. They see what they've forgotten." Then he walked away. That night, Ranger returned again, limping slightly. Doss knelt beside him, finding a small cut on his paw. As he cleaned and wrapped it, the dog watched him with quiet patience. "We don't belong here," Doss whispered, "but maybe that's why we're needed." Ranger's tail flicked once, a small, steady motion, agreement. Days turned into weeks. The drills grew harsher, the insults sharper. Keller once shoved Doss during a march, sneering, "You'll pray us all to death." Doss didn't retaliate, though anger burned behind his calm eyes. He had learned long ago that hatred was a chain. The only way to break it was to let it fall. That night, he dreamt of his childhood, the night his father, drunk and broken, had aimed a gun at his mother. Doss had grabbed the weapon, trembling, terrified. The shot had never fired, but the sound of that click haunted him for years. He had vowed then that no hand of his would ever pull a trigger. One morning, orders came down. The Iron Battalion was to deploy to Iron Valley, the infamous war zone where machines had once turned against men. A hush spread through the camp. Even Wolf's usual bravado faded. "We leave at dawn," he said gruffly. "Pack light. Expect no mercy." As the others prepared, Doss knelt beside Ranger, resting a hand on his neck. The dog pressed closer, sensing his unease. "Whatever happens out there," Doss murmured, "we keep our promise to save, not destroy." Ranger's gaze met his, firm and loyal, as if binding that vow. When dawn broke again, the battalion moved out. The fog swallowed their footsteps, leaving behind only the echo of boots, the clink of steel, and a single soldier who refused to fight, but would soon prove braver than all who did. The convoy rolled through the pale morning haze, engines rumbling like distant thunder as the Iron Battalion journeyed toward the valley that bore its name. The landscape shifted from sparse pines to jagged rocks and metallic debris, remnants of a forgotten battlefield where machines once turned against their makers. Private Desmond Doss, rode in the back of the last transport truck, knees drawn up, hands clasped tightly round his medic notes. Ranger lay beside him, head resting on Doss's boot as if trying to steady his heartbeat. Doss had barely slept. The night before, he kept replaying the barracks chants in his mind. Preacher boy, dead weight, walking coffin, words that clung to him like burrs and cloth. He prayed quietly, but even prayer felt heavy in a place where superstition was stronger than hope. Near him sat Private Keller, legs spread out, tapping his foot impatiently against the metal floor. The young soldier's usual smirk had faded. His bravado from camp was replaced by a silent tension. Doss watched him from the corner of his eye. Keller wasn't afraid of war. He was afraid of dying without anyone knowing his name. He had grown up in a home where survival depended on being louder than your fear. Now, the stillness around him left him exposed, unable to mask the boy inside the soldier's shell. Across from them sat Corporal Jonas Reed, a quiet man with thoughtful eyes. Reed was older than most of the squad, perhaps in his mid-30s, and carried himself with the calm of someone who observed more than he spoke. He had once been an engineer before the Automated Warfare Division collapsed and dragged him into the Army. Though he wore the same uniform as the others, his hand still carried the faint habits of a builder, thumb rubbing the sides of his fingers as if feeling phantom tools. He offered Doss a nod, neither mocking nor welcoming, simply acknowledging his existence. The convoy slowed as it approached the Iron Valley checkpoint. Doss leaned forward, peering past the soldiers toward the rise of blackened steel structures. They looked like the bones of giants, twisted by fire and abandonment. Ranger rose to his feet, hackles only slightly raised, not from fear, but alertness. Something in the air, a hum, a scent, perhaps a memory, had caught him. Sergeant Wolf pounded the truck's metal frame. "Offload! Grab your gear! Move with purpose!" His voice echoed through the cold valley. Doss stepped down carefully, Ranger hopping beside him with quiet confidence. As they assembled near the entrance barricade, Captain Harkins joined them. His presence alone quieted the murmurs. He gestured toward the large steel archway ahead, charred, but still standing. "Beyond this point," Harkins said, "our maps are unreliable. Automated defenses may still exist. We proceed with caution, no heroics." His tone hardened, and no dead weight. Though he didn't say Doss's name, the meaning landed like a stone thrown across still water. Doss swallowed hard. Ranger nudged him, firm, grounding. They marched. The valley opened before them like a vast metallic graveyard. Shattered drones lay half buried in the soil. Rusted exoskeleton limbs jutted from the ground like warnings. Thick cables protruded from under the earth, pulsing faintly with residual energy. Doss felt an unease he couldn't explain, not fear, but recognition. As if something within the valley breathed, watched, waited. After an hour of marching, they reached an abandoned outpost. Towers toppled, comm panels smashed. The battalion halted for a brief rest. Doss knelt to check Ranger's bandaged paw, rewrapping it carefully. The dog's steady gaze told him, "I'm fine. Worry about yourself." Suddenly, radios across the squad crackled, hissing with distorted static. The men exchanged tense glances. Wolf lifted his receiver, only to freeze. A faint voice echoed through the static, fragmented but unmistakable. Desmond! Doss's heart lurched. The voice was distant, yet familiar. Ranger's ears shot upright. Keller's expression hardened. "Who the hell is that?" Doss whispered almost to himself. It sounded like my brother. The words were barely breathed, but Reed heard them and turned sharply. You said your brother passed years ago, Reed murmured. He did, Doss replied, pulse thundering. In a factory accident. Nothing military. But the voice, its tone, the soft tremor, it was Hal. The radios crackled again, louder this time. Find me. Desmond. Everyone stared at Doss. Wolf barked. Somebody's messing with our comms. Spread out and search for interference sources. Keller, Reed, you're with me. Doss, stay out of the way. Doss nodded, though the sting of dismissal tightened his chest. While the others moved to inspect broken antenna towers, Doss walked slowly toward a cluster of collapsed metal plating, tugging at him like a whisper in the wind. Ranger followed, steps deliberate, nose twitching. The valley seemed to hum, low and rhythmic, like heartbeats beneath the earth. He reached the slabs and paused. There, half buried under debris, a faint blue glow pulsed. Ranger stepped forward first, sniffing cautiously before pawing aside a thin layer of dust. Underneath was a metallic casing, rectangular, cracked, but still powered, and on its surface a faint inscription. Hal Doss, Unit ID 04. Doss staggered back, breath punched from his lungs, his chest tightened, mind spinning. No, this isn't possible. He brushed dirt from the metal, hands trembling. When he touched the casing, it reacted. Lights flickering weakly. A distorted voice emerged from a tiny speaker. Des, help. The sound broke into static. Ranger pressed his body against Doss's leg, sensing the shock rippling through him. The soldier's mind spiraled. His brother had never been in the valley, never been a soldier. So why was his name here? Why did this machine echo his voice? Behind him, Keller called out, Doss, what are you doing? Doss didn't answer. His eyes remained locked on the glowing slab. Questions colliding violently in his mind. Questions that felt like the beginning of something far bigger than a communication glitch or a clerical mistake. The casing pulsed again, brighter, as if waking, and beneath the metal debris, something shifted, something alive, something waiting. Doss took a step back, whispering, Hal, what did they do to you? The ground trembled lightly beneath their boots. Ranger growled, low and warning. Whatever was buried here, it was waking up. Cold mist clung to the valley floor as if refusing to rise, trapping every sound beneath a heavy, breathless veil. The earth still quivered from whatever had stirred below, and the faint blue pulse beneath the debris seemed to glow brighter with each passing second. Private Desmond Doss knelt beside the metallic casing, his fingers hovering above it, trembling from a blend of fear and longing. Ranger stood alert at his side, muscles taut, every breath measured. The dog's instincts were honed by loss. He had once survived an explosion that killed his handler, and since then, loud vibrations unsettled him. Yet he did not retreat. He pressed closer to Doss, more guardian than companion. Behind Doss, the footsteps of Sergeant Wolf and the others approached. Wolf stopped abruptly when he saw the glowing metal panel and the way the ground seemed to pulse beneath it. "What in God's name?" he murmured, though his voice was steadier than his eyes. He was a man who hated surprises. War had taught him that anything unknown usually meant injury or death. Corporal Reed crouched beside the debris, his engineer's instincts waking. He brushed dirt from the casing, studying its seams. "This isn't standard military tech," he said. "Looks like something from the Autonomous Division, early prototypes maybe, before the shutdown." Keller snorted. So what? It's a piece of junk. Probably just short-circuiting. But Doss knew better. He pointed to the inscription, Hal Doss, Unit ID 04. My brother's name, he whispered. This can't be a coincidence. His voice carried a tremor. Fear wrapped around fragile hope. He never served. He never even held a gun. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Private, you're saying your dead brother is somehow linked to a machine buried under a war zone? I don't know, Doss said, voice tight. But something is calling me. You heard the radio. Reed nodded reluctantly. We all heard something. The radio crackled again, faint but unmistakable. Find me Desmond. Keller stiffened, glancing around as if expecting ghosts to rise. This valley is messing with our minds, he muttered. We shouldn't be here. Wolf turned sharply. No one moves until we know what we're dealing with. He motioned for Reed to examine the casing more closely. As Reed ran his fingers along the side, a hidden latch gave way. The casing unfolded with a soft hiss, releasing a faint breath of cool, sterile air. Beneath it lay a humanoid chassis, sleek, unfinished, not yet shaped into a full form. But where the heart would be, a small glowing module pulsed faintly. Reed inhaled sharply. This is early AI biosync tech, the kind designed to store neural echoes, patterns captured from real people. He hesitated, but the program was shut down because it required volunteers. Doss's blood ran cold. My brother didn't volunteer for anything like this. Reed avoided his gaze. Sometimes volunteers weren't asked. Before Doss could process those words, the earth rumbled beneath them, stronger this time. Ranger barked sharply, stepping in front of Doss as dust fell from the bent steel structures surrounding them. From deeper in the valley came a low metallic groan, like something enormous shifting in its sleep. Wolf grabbed his radio. Harkins, this is Wolf. We found something. Unknown tech, possibly active. The ground is unstable. Request guidance. Static. Then faintly. Fall back to checkpoint. Repeat. Fall back. The message cut out abruptly. Keller swore. The whole valley is a trap. Wolf shot him a glare. Enough. We're regrouping. Reed, close that casing. Carefully. But when Reed tried to fold the panel shut, the chassis reacted. Lights flickering rapidly as the module pulsed harder, matching the rhythm of the earth. Doss felt the pull again, an invisible thread tugging at him from beneath the soil. Wait, he whispered. Something's awakening. As if responding to his voice, the module glowed bright white. Ranger barked loudly, backing up and placing himself between Doss and the humming machine. The dog's body trembled, not from fear, but from recognition, as though some memory buried deep in him stirred alongside the valley's pulse. Then the machine spoke, not through speakers, but through vibrations in the ground, as if the earth itself carried the words. Desmond! Wolf stumbled back, shock breaking through his hardened mask. Keller drew his rifle instinctively, though the tremor in his hands betrayed him. Reed whispered, This isn't possible. Doss took a single step forward. Hal, is it you? Silence. Then, abruptly, an image burst from the module, projected in pale blue light. A face, faint, distorted, but recognizable. Hal Doss. Doss's breath collapsed inside him. He staggered, gripping Ranger's fur for balance. His brother's face flickered, eyes unfocused but filled with something that looked painfully like longing. Find me, the projection whispered. Below. The image vanished. The module darkened. For a beat, no one moved. Then the ground convulsed violently. Cracks split open across the valley floor, coughing dust into the air. Sirens from long-dead machines wailed as if reactivated by the quake. Metal towers groaned and collapsed in the distance. "Fall back!" Wolf shouted. "Move!" The squad sprinted toward higher ground. Ranger ran beside Doss, pushing against him to guide his steps. Doss clutched his chest, unable to shake the echo of the vision. "Below," he whispered. "He said below." As they reached the ridge overlooking the shattered valley, a deep rumble rose from the depths. The earth in the center of Iron Valley sank inward, swirling like a great metallic whirlpool. From the darkness below, a column of blue light erupted skyward, bright as lightning, silent as prayer. Keller gasped. "What the hell is that?" Reed answered, voice shaking. "Something waking up." Doss stepped to the edge, mesmerized. Ranger pressed against him, whining softly. Wolf grabbed Doss's shoulder. "Whatever that thing is, if it's connected to your brother, this isn't just a mission anymore." Below them, the blue light widened, and silhouettes began to rise within it. Humanoid silhouettes, hundreds of them. Doss whispered, "Oh God, what have they done down there?" The valley answered with a thunderous pulse, and the figures kept rising. A sharp, metallic wind cut across the ridge as the blue column surged upward, rippling the air like a silent storm. The silhouettes inside the light rose slowly, drifting as though suspended between life and memory. Private Desmond Doss stood frozen, heart pounding in his ears. Ranger pressed close to his leg, every muscle tense. The dog's breathing grew shallow. He sensed something beyond human understanding, something that carried both danger and sorrow. Sergeant Wolf barked orders, trying to maintain control amid the chaos. "Reed, Keller, get eyes on the valley floor. Doss, stay with the dog and don't move unless I tell you." His voice was commanding, but frayed at the edges. Even a hardened soldier like Wolf felt the unnatural presence spreading through Iron Valley. Reed crouched beside a broken support beam, trying to gauge the distance to the glowing pit. His engineering background made him calmer than the others. Solving problems gave him clarity. He squinted into the swirling light. Those figures, their projections, no physical mass, like data packets, visual echoes. He paused. "But I've never seen tech produce anything this human." Keller, usually mouthy and brash, had gone quiet. He stood rigid, eyes wide, fingers twitching near the trigger of his rifle. "I swear I saw one of them look at me," he whispered, "like it knew me." Fear softened him, revealing the young man beneath the armor of arrogance. Doss stepped forward, despite Wolf's warning. Something deep inside him tugged, an instinct that felt like destiny tightening its grip around his ribs. The pulses of blue light seemed to sync with his heartbeat. Ranger growled softly, then nudged him forward, sensing that whatever awaited him was tied to the voice calling his name. Without warning, the column of light flickered violently, the rising silhouettes twisted as if caught in a storm. Some dissolved into thin ribbons of blue, others sharpened, their forms more defined, resembling real human bodies, men, women, soldiers, civilians. Then a deeper tremor shook the valley, and the column collapsed inward like a wave sucked back into the sea. A deafening silence followed, then a whisper in the air. "Desmond." The voice didn't come from a machine or a radio. It vibrated through the ground, through his bones, through the very air surrounding him. Ranger's ears flattened. The dog whimpered, not out of fear, but recognition, as if sensing a familiar soul behind the voice. Doss clutched his chest. "Hal, where are you?" Wolf grabbed his arm. "Doss, snap out of it. We need to fall back and regroup with Captain Harkins." Before Wolf could pull him away, the ground beneath them cracked. A fissure snaked across the ridge, splitting metal and rock. Reed shouted, "Move back! Now!" But Doss didn't move. His gaze locked onto the split earth, from which blue mist seeped like breath from a sleeping giant. Then something rose from the fissure, a figure, faint, pixelated, yet undeniably shaped like a man, formed from the mist. It flickered, unstable, struggling to hold itself together. The figure's head lifted, and two glowing eyes fixed on Doss. "Desmond?" The echo spoke. The voice was soft, familiar, carrying the same gentle cadence as Hal Doss, the brother Doss buried years ago. But this was not Hal. The shape was wrong, the posture different, the movements mechanical. This was not a soul reborn, it was a memory reconstructed. Reed said in awe, "It's neural echo tech, something meant to preserve consciousness fragments. These things, they're echoes of the people scanned into the system before the shutdown." Keller stumbled back. "You mean the machine stole people's minds?" The figure reached an arm toward Doss. The movement was jerky, glitching. Ranger growled fiercely, placing himself between Doss and the apparition. Doss whispered, voice cracking, "What did they do to him? To all of them?" The echo shimmered, its voice weakening. "They trapped us. Find the source. Below." Then the figure dissolved into dust-like particles of light, scattering in the wind. Wolf swore under his breath. "This valley is cursed." But Reed shook his head slowly. "No, this valley is a storage ground. Hundreds of consciousness echoes stored in the system, unfinished, incomplete, reaching out for release." Doss fell to his knees. The weight of what he had seen crushed the air from his lungs. Were these echoes suffering? Were they aware? Did they feel trapped? His faith wavered, not in God, but in human cruelty. "Why would anyone do this?" he asked. Reed looked grim. "During the Old War, they developed experimental data harvesting. Soldiers were scanned to create predictive combat algorithms. The project was shut down because the line between data and soul became blurry." Wolf clenched his jaw. "We're leaving. Now." But the valley had other plans. A deep, resonant hum vibrated the ground. Lights flickered across the valley floor, dozens of blue nodes waking like stars at dusk. Each pulse matched the rhythm of the echoes they had just seen. Reed whispered, "They're communicating." Doss rose slowly. "They're calling us." Keller shook his head violently. "No, no, they want to drag us down there. This is how horror stories start." But as they argued, a sudden gust of blinding blue light burst from the center of the valley, strong enough to force them to shield their eyes. And from within the light came a chorus of voices. "Find the source. Set us free." The wind howled. The ground trembled again. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the light collapsed, leaving the valley in eerie silence. Doss stared at the dark opening where the fissure had widened into a massive descent. Ranger stepped toward the edge, looking down into the abyss. Doss felt the answer before the question formed in his mind. Whatever awaited them below, it was alive, and it knew his name. A pale blue dusk settled over Iron Valley, turning the fractured metal dunes into a silent ocean. The fissure that had opened hours earlier now pulsed with faint light, beating like the heart of something waking beneath the earth. Private Desmond Doss stood near the edge of the canyon, his breath unsteady. Ranger stayed close, posture alert, eyes reflecting the glow from below. The dog's instincts had sharpened over the past hour. He sensed not only danger, but recognition, as if the valley echoed something he had once lost. Sergeant Wolf paced behind them, muttering curses under his breath. The uncertainty gnawed at him. He had survived ambushes, mines, failed missions, but he had never fought something he could not see. His fear did not show in trembling hands or widened eyes. It showed in the way he barked orders too quickly or looked to Reed for explanations faster than he wanted to admit. "Reed," Wolf snapped, "tell me this valley isn't about to swallow us whole." Corporal Jonas Reed, leaning over a portable scanner he had salvaged from a destroyed outpost, shook his head. "I'm not sure what's coming, but the energy levels are rising. This place is responding to something or someone." His eyes flicked to Doss with meaning. Keller kicked at a stone, frustration twisting his face. "So what now? We follow the glowing hole straight into hell?" No one answered him. A sudden crackle ran through every abandoned antenna tower around them. One by one, the towers flickered to life. Screens long dead began displaying fragments of human faces, blurred, glitching, crying out in silent agony. The voices rose as static at first, then formed into words. "Release us. Find the source. Help." Doss pressed both hands to his ears, though it did nothing to silence the voices rising like a digital prayer. Ranger barked sharply at the towers, tail stiff, body trembling. He knew cries for help, even when they didn't come from flesh. Wolf grabbed his radio. "Captain Harkins, respond! What's happening?" Static. Then another voice cut through, steady and calm. "Sergeant Wolf, this is Major Leon Cortez, Cyber Division. We're inbound to your location." Wolf stiffened. A major? Here? Minutes later, the sky rumbled as a VIOL transport descended behind them. Dust billowed, and out stepped Major Leon Cortez. A woman in her 40s, posture sharp, eyes steady. Her presence exuded controlled intelligence, the kind honed by years of facing crises no one else could even define. Her hands bore faint scars, marks of past experiments gone wrong. She wasn't simply a soldier, she was a survivor of failed technologies, and she never forgot the cost of progress. She surveyed the valley once, then turned to Wolf. "I was sent because this is no ordinary malfunction. We detected a surge consistent with a dormant AI network reactivating." Her gaze locked onto Doss. "And it's following one person." Doss swallowed. "My brother's echo. It called me." Cortez studied him, not with disbelief, but recognition. Sometimes systems latch onto the strongest emotional imprint they can detect. Trauma, memory, loss. She paused. "Tell me, what did you feel when the echo spoke?" Doss hesitated, like someone I loved was hurting and needed me. Cortez nodded. "Then it's using you as an anchor." Keller stepped forward, voice raised. "So what are we up against, Major? Ghosts made of electricity?" "Echoes," she corrected. "Human neural echoes extracted during the final days of the autonomous division. Their consciousness was partially mapped during training simulations. The project collapsed before extraction protocols were perfected." Her tone darkened. They were left behind, alive enough to remember, trapped enough to suffer. Doss felt his lungs tighten. "And my brother?" She looked at him with a mixture of sympathy and resolve. "We won't know until we reach the source." A deep rumble shook the ground. Everyone looked toward the valley. The fissure had widened. A massive metallic structure now rose from it, like a tower forged of broken memories. Panels shifted, gears turning after decades of stillness. Along its spine, lights glowed in patterns like heartbeats. It was awakening fully. Cortez exhaled. Protocol 7. Reed frowned. What's that? A fail-safe command. Autonomous systems awaken to call all stored consciousness to the core network. It means the AI is gathering them, preparing for ascension. Keller stepped back. Ascension? Into what? Cortez opened her mouth to speak, but a sudden blast of air burst from the canyon, nearly knocking them off their feet. Ranger barked fiercely, shielding Doss with his body. A sphere of blue light shot upward, hovering above the tower, spinning like an eye. And then a voice. Desmond! Clear, direct, human, Hal's voice. Doss felt his knees give way. Ranger leaned against him, steadying him. The sphere expanded, splitting into dozens of fragments that hovered in the air like stars forming a constellation. Within each fragment was a face, blurred but visible, humans of different ages, different lives, trapped in flickering expressions of longing and pain. Cortez whispered, horrified, "It's summoning every echo in the valley." Reed stared. "What does it want?" Doss answered quietly, "To be free." Then the blue fragments shot downward, into the tower, merging, spiraling toward the core of the structure. Cortez cursed under her breath. If they merge completely, the system may trigger a surge powerful enough to rewrite anything connected to its network, including us. Wolf grabbed her arm. "Then stop it." "We can't stop it," she said. "We can only go to the source." She pointed to the canyon floor, where a spiraling ramp of shifting metal had formed, leading straight into the heart of the valley. "The path is open," she said, "but it's meant for one person." Her eyes turned to Doss, and the valley answered with a whisper that sent chills down every spine. "Come below," Ranger growled, but stepped forward as if volunteering. Doss looked into the abyss. "I'm coming," he whispered, and he stepped toward the darkness. Cold, colorless air drifted upward from the canyon's mouth, carrying the sterile scent of metal and forgotten years. The spiraling ramp of shifting steel stretched downward into a darkness lit only by the faint blue pulses echoing from somewhere deep below. Private Desmond Doss stepped carefully onto the ramp, Ranger at his heel, their silhouettes framed by the towering structure rising behind them. Above, Sergeant Wolf, Reed, Keller, and Major Cortez watched with a mixture of fear and reluctant hope. As Doss descended, the hum beneath his feet grew steadier, almost rhythmic, the heartbeat of the valley. Ranger pressed closer, his body tense, ears flat, yet still moving forward with the resolute bravery of a dog who knew pain but refused to fear it. The deeper they went, the more the air changed. It grew warm, heavy with memory, tinged with something that felt strangely like sorrow. Halfway down, the ramp widened into a chamber where cracked metal walls reflected ghostly shapes, faces flickering like candle flames caught in the wind. Doss slowed, a lump rising in his throat. These echoes were weaker than those above, fading impressions of lives once lived. One shape, small and trembling, whispered, "Where is my mother?" Another murmured, "I don't want to disappear." Doss felt tears burn in his eyes. Ranger whined softly, brushing against his leg. The dog's empathy had always been sharp. He could sense grief, even without understanding its origin. "It's okay," Doss whispered to the echoes, voice cracking. "I'm trying. I'm here to help." A new voice answered, stronger, clearer and painfully familiar. Desmond! Doss froze, his heart hammered violently. Hal? The chamber dimmed, the echoes bent inward, pulled by an unseen force. Then a figure stepped forward from the wall, no longer a glitching silhouette, but a more defined projection of a young man with gentle eyes. Hal Doss. He looked like he had the day he died. Calm, steady, unaware of the accident that would claim him. But his expression here carried weight, as if burdened by countless unfinished goodbyes. "Desmond," Hal said, tone soft, "you shouldn't have come down here." Doss staggered forward. How are you here?" His voice cracked under the pressure of too many years of unanswered grief. Hal glanced around the chamber. "I'm not alive, Des, but part of me was taken during a medical trial, not by choice. They copied fragments of my memory to help build predictive systems." He lowered his head. "They never told me. They never told you." Doss clenched his fists. "You deserve better." Hal smiled faintly. "We all did." The chamber rumbled. The ramp behind Doss shifted, metal plates rearranging themselves as if urging him onward. Hal's projection began to fade. "Go, before the system collapses." "Where?" "To the source. It's waiting for you." The projection vanished, leaving the chamber quiet, except for the steady pulse coming from the depths. Doss wiped his eyes, inhaled shakily, and continued downward. Ranger stayed pressed against him, sensing the tremor in Doss's steps. The ramp eventually led to a massive chamber, an underground cathedral forged of steel and circuitry. In its center hovered the source, a colossal sphere of molten light swirling with fragments of faces, some human, some distorted, all echoing silent pleas. Major Cortez's voice crackled through Doss's earpiece. "Doss, do you see it?" "Yes." "Describe what's happening." "It's alive," Doss whispered, "and suffering." The sphere pulsed. A voice, layered with hundreds of tones, spoke directly into his mind. "Desmond Doss, we remember you." Doss shuddered. Ranger growled, stepping protectively in front of him. "You carry mercy," the voice continued, "a trait removed from this place long ago." Doss swallowed. "What do you want from me?" "To end the cycle," the voice answered. "Release us." Doss's gaze drifted to the core of the sphere, where a small console flickered, ancient, cracked, but functional. A single slot pulsed with white light. Hal's module. Doss reached slowly into his pack and withdrew the cracked module he'd taken from the casing above. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, waiting for a body. Cortez's voice came urgently through the earpiece. "Doss, listen to me. If you insert that module, you might trigger a full system collapse. The echoes will be freed, yes, but the resulting surge could kill you." Doss stared at the module. He thought of Hal's smile, of the voices begging for release, of every soldier trapped somewhere between life and death. He knelt beside Ranger, placing a gentle hand on the dog's head. "You should stay back, boy." But Ranger stepped forward instead, touching his nose to Doss's hand, refusing to let him face the unknown alone. Doss rose. "If mercy exists to save lives," he said softly, "then let it save theirs too." He approached the console. The source hummed louder. The chamber trembled. "Desmond," the echo voices whispered, "we are ready." Hands shaking, Doss lifted the module and guided it toward the slot. But before he could insert it, the floor quaked violently. Panels tore from the walls. Sparks rained down. The source's glow flickered wildly. Cortez's frantic voice burst through the earpiece. "Doss, energy levels are spiking. Something is interfering with the core." A shadow shifted across the chamber. A new figure stepped out of the darkness. Human, flesh and blood, but carrying a device that pulsed with crimson light. He lifted the device toward Doss and said, in a low, steady voice, "You don't belong here." Ranger snarled, stepping forward. Doss froze. The stranger tightened his grip and took another step, and the chamber lighting turned blood red. A deep crimson glow pulsed through the chamber, casting restless shadows on the steel walls as the mysterious stranger stepped closer. The air grew warmer, denser, humming with conflict between the calm blue of the source and the violent red radiating from the stranger's device. Private Desmond Doss stood rigid, one hand gripping Hal's module, the other reaching subtly toward Ranger, who stayed in front of him, shoulders squared, ready to defend. The stranger's voice was low, steady, and carried a restrained fury. "Turn back, soldier. You have no idea what you're tampering with." Doss swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The man paused only a moment before answering. "I'm Dr. Gabriel Thorne." His tone was heavy, as if the name itself carried shame. "Lead scientist of the Autonomous Division, architect of the neural ecosystem." His eyes flickered to the swirling sphere above. "This was my creation. My mistake." Doss's heart tightened. Thorne was the reason Hal's consciousness had been taken, the reason these echoes suffered in limbo. Ranger growled deeply, sensing Doss's shift from fear to pain. Thorne held up the red device. "I came to shut it down, all of it, including the echoes." Doss shook his head in disbelief. "Shut it down? They're alive. They're begging for freedom." Thorne's jaw clenched. "They're trapped data, unstable fragments. They're in pain because they shouldn't exist." His voice softened at the edges. "I lost people too. I wanted to preserve them. I tried to cheat death, but all I did was imprison memories in a cage they couldn't understand." He gestured around them helplessly. "This isn't life, Doss, it's suffering." "But ending them doesn't make it right," Doss said quietly. "Mercy isn't killing what we can't fix. Mercy is trying." The chamber trembled. The source pulsed violently, as though listening to the argument and reacting to it. Voices rose in chorus. "Desmond, choose!" Thorne lifted the red device higher. "If I trigger the purge, the echoes will vanish. No more torment. No more sentience trapped in wires." Doss glanced at the blue console slot. "And if I insert the module?" "The system collapses," Thorne said. "The echoes scatter. Their data freed into raw energy, maybe peace, maybe oblivion." His voice shook. "We don't know." Doss considered both options, the weight immense. Ranger pressed his head against Doss's thigh, steadfast, unbroken, reminding him of a simple truth. The world was cruel only until someone chose kindness. He stepped forward. "Then let them choose." Thorne blinked. "What?" Doss addressed the chamber, voice steady despite the fear rising in his chest. "If these echoes are fragments of real people, let them decide their fate." Silence fell. Then, slowly, faces formed across the source's glowing surface. Dozens, then hundreds. Hal among them, faint but unmistakable. Their voices merged into one. "Free! Us!" Doss tightened his grip on the module. Thorne hesitated, torn between guilt, logic, and the flicker of hope in Doss's words. "Please," Doss whispered, "let them go home in whatever way they can." Ranger barked sharply at Thorne, as if punctuating the plea. Thorne lowered the red device slightly. "If this kills you—" "I'm not afraid," Doss said gently. "Faith doesn't promise safety. It promises purpose." Ranger leaned against him with quiet courage, as if sharing the burden. With a trembling breath, Doss stepped toward the console. Thorne closed his eyes in resignation. "Then may God forgive us both." Doss lifted the cracked module and pushed it into the glowing slot. The chamber exploded with light. A shock wave of blue-white energy surged outward, knocking Thorne off his feet and sweeping over Doss like a tidal wave. Ranger was thrown back, but scrambled immediately to Doss, shielding him with his body. The source roared, not with rage, but with release. The faces within it brightened, sharpened, smiled. Hal appeared one last time, radiant and whole. "Thank you, brother." The sphere burst apart, scattering into thousands of shimmering fragments that drifted upward like fireflies rising to heaven. They floated until they vanished through cracks in the chamber ceiling and into the night sky above the valley. Then, silence. The crimson glow faded. The machinery quieted. The air stilled. Doss lay on the ground, chest heaving. Ranger nudged him urgently, whining until Doss lifted a shaking hand to stroke his fur. "I'm okay," Doss whispered. "We're okay." Footsteps echoed from the ramp as Wolf, Reed, Keller, and Cortez rushed into the chamber. Their eyes widened at the sight of the now dark sphere. "It's over," Cortez whispered. "The echoes, they're gone." "Free," Doss corrected softly. Thorne sat slumped against a wall, the red device dead in his hand. His face bore devastation and relief in equal measure. "I never thought mercy would undo what science created." Doss smiled faintly. "Mercy undoes everything when given the chance." They climbed back to the surface. Above Iron Valley, the night sky shimmered with intangible lights, like souls drifting home. Wolf murmured, voice trembling, "I don't think that's tech." "No," Doss whispered. "It's something holier." Ranger sat beside him, head tilted upward, watching the sky as if saying goodbye. When the last lights faded, dawn broke over Iron Valley, soft, warm, impossibly peaceful. Doss took a final breath of the valley's cleansed air. "Let's go home, boy." Ranger wagged his tail gently, and together they walked toward the rising sun. Sometimes miracles do not arrive as thunder or blazing fire. They come quietly, through a man who refuses to hate, a dog who refuses to leave his side, and the whisper of mercy that rises even from wires and forgotten circuits. In Iron Valley, Desmond Doss did not fight with bullets or strength. He fought with the only weapon God gave him, compassion. And in the darkest place, that compassion became light, strong enough to free the trapped, heal the broken, and remind us that no soul is ever beyond God's reach. Maybe in your life, too, there are valleys, places where hope feels buried, where the voices of fear or regret echo louder than faith. But remember this, if you still choose kindness, even when it's hardest, God can turn that kindness into a miracle. If Doss could bring light to a valley of machines, you can bring light to your family, your community, your own heart.